Dr. Elias Mercer's hands trembled as he adjusted the quantum stabilizer. The midnight silence of his private laboratory was broken only by the soft hum of machines and the occasional ping from his detection array. For 3 years, he had tracked the anomalous signal, convinced that humanity wasn't alone. Nobody at the research institute believed him, but tonight would change everything. The stabilizer whirred to life, projecting a shimmering field that expanded through the center of the room. Elias stepped back, heart hammering against his ribs. This was it. His modified quantum entanglement device could theoretically open a communication channel across vast distances, specifically to the source of those signals. "Please work," he whispered, fingers flying across his holographic interface. The air crackled. What began as a pinpoint of violet light expanded into a swirling vortex. Elias shielded his eyes as wind whipped through his laboratory, scattering papers and knocking over equipment. When the light faded, he lowered his arm and froze. Standing before him was a woman. No, not a woman. Her skin had a faint blue luminescence and her hair, swept back in an elaborate braid, shimmered with what looked like embedded stars. She wore form-fitting armor that pulsed with strange symbols, and at her hip hung a weapon unlike anything he'd ever seen. Her eyes, entirely silver with no visible pupils, fixed on him. "Human," she said, her voice carrying an otherworldly harmonic. "I am Commander Thalira of the Astral Sovereignty. You have breached our communications network." Elias swallowed hard. I was attempting to establish contact. "Unauthorized contact is prohibited." Her hand moved to her weapon. "Your species has not been cleared for galactic integration. I am here to assess the threat level and respond accordingly." "We're not a threat," Elias said quickly, backing up against his console. "I'm just a scientist seeking knowledge." "A scientist who managed to pierce our quantum security grid." Her expression remained impassive. "That alone classifies you as a potential threat." She raised her hand, and the device at her wrist projected a scanning beam that swept over his laboratory. "Primitive, but ingenious application of quantum principles. You shouldn't have been able to achieve this for another century." "I've always been ahead of the curve," Elias said, trying to mask his fear with bravado. Thalira's eyes narrowed. "I must determine if your advancement is isolated or indicative of your species' trajectory." Before Elias could respond, she moved with startling speed, knocking him aside and accessing his computer system. Her fingers danced over his interface, absorbing years of research in moments. "You don't have permission to," Elias lunged for her, but she pivoted, twisted his arm behind him, and pressed him against the wall in one fluid motion. "I don't require permission," she said coolly. Something in Elias snapped. He wasn't going to let his life's work be stolen or destroyed. With a movement he'd perfected in his university judo classes, he broke her hold and activated the lab's defensive measures. Force fields sprang up, separating sections of the lab. Thalira found herself trapped in a quantum containment field. "Impressive," she said, examining the translucent barrier, "but insufficient." She raised her weapon, but Elias was faster. He triggered the electromagnetic pulse he'd installed as a failsafe. Her armor flickered and powered down, her weapon falling useless to the floor. For the first time, surprise registered on her face. "The difference between your technology and mine," Elias said, approaching the field cautiously, "is that I designed mine to work even after an EMP." Thalira's silver eyes widened. "You anticipated this encounter." "I anticipated something." He crossed his arms. "Now, would you like to have a civilized conversation, or should I call whatever passes for authorities in your civilization?" A strange expression crossed her face, something between shock and respect. She lowered herself to one knee, head bowed. "By the ancient law of the astral sovereignty, you have defeated me in direct combat through superior strategy. I am bound to you until such time as my debt of honor is repaid." "Wait, what?" Elias stepped back. "That's not what I was going for. I just wanted you to stop hacking my computers." "The outcome remains." Thalira looked up, her expression solemn. "I am yours to command, Dr. Elias Mercer. My knowledge, skills, and loyalty now belong to you until death or the debt is satisfied." Elias ran a hand through his dark hair. "You can't be serious." "My people do not jest about matters of honor." She placed her fist over her chest. "I am now your sentinel, your warrior, your shield. This is our way." As Elias stared at the alien warrior pledging herself to him, he realized his life would never be the same. First contact wasn't going according to any scenario he'd imagined, and he had a feeling this was only the beginning of the complications. "Can we start," he said weakly, "with you not destroying my research?" For the first time, a hint of a smile touched Thalira's lips. "As you wish, Master." Keep your head down, Elias muttered, glancing nervously around the corner of the laboratory corridor. And try to look less alien. Thalira adjusted the oversized lab coat and sunglasses he'd given her, but there was no hiding her luminescent blue skin or the faint glow that emanated from her even in daylight. This disguise is ineffective, she stated flatly. My biomolecular structure is fundamentally different from. Just try, Elias interrupted, ushering her quickly past the security checkpoint. He nodded casually to the guard, who barely looked up from his tablet. 3 days had passed since Thalira's arrival, and Elias still hadn't figured out what to do with an alien warrior who insisted she was now bound to his service. Once safely inside his personal lab, Elias locked the door and exhaled. This can't continue. Someone's going to notice you. Thalira removed the sunglasses, her silver eyes adjusting to the fluorescent lighting. I have told you the solution. Allow me to activate my cloaking technology once my armor recharges. Which requires connecting to your ship's power source, Elias countered. And we've been through this. I'm not ready to let you make contact with whoever else might be out there. Thalira's expression remained impassive, but Elias had started to recognize the subtle tightening around her eyes that indicated frustration. You fear my people, she said. Yet by defeating me, you've already drawn their attention. It is only a matter of time before they investigate my prolonged absence. Elias ran a hand through his disheveled hair. That's not comforting. He turned to his workbench, where Thalira's partially disassembled weapon lay. He'd been studying it when she wasn't looking, a risky endeavor since she rarely left his side. You continue to examine technology beyond your comprehension, Thalira observed, moving closer. The subtle scent of what reminded him of crystallized honey wafted from her skin. I understand more than you think, he replied, trying to ignore her proximity. Your quantum phase modulator operates on principles similar to my own research. For the first time, Thalira seemed genuinely surprised. Perhaps I have underestimated your species' advancement. Their eyes met and Elias felt an unexpected jolt of connection. He quickly looked away. Can we discuss this pledge situation again? He asked, changing the subject. I don't need a servant or a bodyguard. What I need is information about your civilization and technology. Thalira considered this. The pledge is not servitude as you understand it. It is a sacred bond. I am bound to protect and aid you, not to serve blindly. Then aid me by telling me about the threat your people pose to Earth, Elias said. You mentioned assessment and response. What exactly does that mean? Thalira hesitated, internal conflict visible on her face. Finally, she said, the astral sovereignty monitors developing worlds. Those deemed too aggressive or unstable are contained. Contained, Elias repeated, a chill running down his spine. Isolated, prevented from achieving interstellar capabilities. She looked away. In extreme cases, evolutionary redirection is employed. You mean extinction, Elias said flatly. It has rarely been necessary, she replied, her voice softer. Your world is at a critical juncture. Your technology advances quickly, but your societal structures remain tribal and volatile. Elias paced the lab, processing this revelation. And now that you're here, what happens? My mission was assessment only, but my failure to return will trigger a deeper investigation. Thalira's hand moved unconsciously to her chest, where he knew a symbol of her rank was embedded in her skin beneath the human clothing. Then we need to prepare, Elias said, determination replacing fear. That night they worked side by side, Thalira explaining basic principles of her technology while Elias adapted his equipment accordingly. Hours passed in intense collaboration, and Elias found himself increasingly fascinated not just by the alien knowledge, but by Thalira herself. Her precise movements, her analytical mind, the rare moments when appreciation or even amusement flickered across her features. As dawn approached, exhaustion finally overcame him. He slumped in his chair, eyes heavy. You require rest, Thalira observed, closer than he expected. Her hand hovered near his shoulder but didn't touch him. What about you? He asked sleepily. Do your people need sleep? We enter regenerative states, she answered, but my pledge gives me strength beyond normal limits. Elias looked up at her, suddenly aware of how the laboratory lights caught the stellar patterns in her hair. That pledge, is it always between warrior and captor? Something shifted in her silver eyes. No, historically it was often between warriors and those they came to value. The word hung in the air between them, laden with unspoken meaning. And do you value me, Thalira? Elias found himself asking. She turned away, but not before he caught a flicker of confusion, or perhaps vulnerability, cross her face. I am still determining what you are to me, she answered quietly. beyond my pledge holder. As Elias drifted to sleep in his laboratory chair, he realized with alarm that he was becoming far too intrigued by an alien who, pledge or not, represented a civilization that might well decide the fate of his entire world. Even more alarming, he was beginning to care what she thought of him. The attack came at midnight. Elias jerked awake to the sound of Thalira's voice, urgent and commanding. We've been located, hostile forces approaching. He stumbled from the cot he'd set up in his lab, disoriented but quickly alert. Your people. Not sovereignty forces, she replied, already activating her armor. The plates that had been dormant for weeks hummed to life, once again encasing her in gleaming protection. These are Vazari raiders, scavengers who track advanced technology. How did they find us? Elias asked, grabbing the modified pulse weapon he'd been developing based on Thalira's designs. The quantum resonance from your experiments. She tossed him a small device. Emergency beacon if we're separated activated. Their eyes met briefly. 2 weeks of working together had created an unexpected synchronicity between them. Elias nodded, tucking the device into his pocket. The first explosion rocked the building seconds later. Stay behind me, Thalira ordered, but Elias moved to her side instead. Together, he insisted, your pledge to me, remember, that means you follow my lead sometimes. A flicker of what might have been admiration crossed her face. As you wish. They moved through the darkened corridors of the research facility, emergency lights casting eerie shadows. Most of the staff had gone home, but Elias knew the night security team would be walking into danger. We need to warn security, he whispered. Too late, Thalira pointed ahead where 2 guards lay unconscious. Non-lethal neurostunners, they'll recover. They rounded a corner and came face to face with 3 figures. Humanoid but clearly alien, with translucent skin revealing pulsing organs beneath and breathing apparatuses covering their lower faces. The female is sovereignty, one hissed through its translator. The male is indigenous, take them both. Thalira moved with lethal precision, her body flowing like liquid mercury as she engaged the first 2 raiders. Elias, despite weeks of Thalira's combat training, felt clumsy by comparison. Still, he managed to disable the 3rd raider with a well-placed shot from his pulse weapon. Your aim has improved, Thalira noted as they continued deeper into the facility. I had a good teacher, Elias replied. They reached his laboratory, where Elias quickly began shutting down equipment and securing data. They're after my research, aren't they? And me, Thalira admitted. A sovereignty commander would fetch a high price in certain markets. The thought of Thalira being captured and sold ignited something primal in Elias' chest. That's not happening. More raiders converged on their position. Thalira and Elias fought back-to-back, her combat skills complementing his knowledge of the facility. He triggered electromagnetic pulses while she dispatched enemies with precise strikes. Behind you, Elias shouted, but too late. A raider's energy blade sliced across Thalira's side, cutting through her armor. She staggered but continued fighting. Rage and fear propelled Elias forward. He tackled the raider, delivering a knockout blow with the butt of his weapon. When he turned back, Thalira was finishing off the last attacker. Then she collapsed. Thalira, he rushed to her side, panic rising as he saw the blue fluid seeping from her wound. Tell me what to do. The wound is not fatal, she managed, her silver eyes flickering, but their blades carry a neurotoxin. Elias helped her to his workstation, clearing space for her to lie down. What do you need? Thalira, stay with me. Her hand caught his, surprisingly warm. In my armor, 2nd compartment, cellular regenerator. With shaking hands, Elias found the small device and followed her weakening instructions to apply it to her wound. The lab fell silent except for the soft hum of the regenerator and Thalira's labored breathing. Why did you protect me? She asked suddenly, her voice barely audible. You could have escaped. Elias looked down at her, realization dawning. The same reason you've been teaching me to defend myself instead of just defending me. I care what happens to you. Something changed in her expression, a softening, a vulnerability he'd never seen before. Her hand tightened around his. The pledge is becoming something else, she whispered. Yes, he admitted, for me too. Hours later, when the facility had been secured and the remaining raiders captured, Elias sat beside Thalira as she recovered. Dawn light filtered through the laboratory windows, casting her alien features in a golden glow. Your world will be noticed now, she said quietly. The sovereignty will come. Let them, Elias replied, surprising himself with his confidence. We'll be ready. Thalira's hand found his again, her touch deliberate this time. We. Yes, we, he intertwined his fingers with hers, marveling at how right it felt despite the alienness of her skin. I'm not your master, Thalira, I never was, but I'd like to be your partner. She sat up slowly, wincing slightly from her healing wound. Her free hand reached up to touch his face, tentative and curious. Partners, she repeated as if testing the word. That is, acceptable. Elias smiled, just acceptable. And then, to his astonishment, Thalira smiled back. A full, genuine smile that transformed her face and sent his heart racing. More than acceptable, she amended, leaning closer. Their foreheads touched, an intimate gesture that Elias somehow knew was significant in her culture. In that moment, as sunlight spilled across the devastated laboratory, something profound shifted between them, something that transcended pledges and obligations, something that felt remarkably like belonging. The molecular structure isn't quite right, Elias muttered, adjusting the synthesizer. It needs to match your physiological requirements. Thalira watched him from across the hidden mountain laboratory they'd established after fleeing the compromised research facility. Snow fell gently outside the windows, creating a sense of isolation that had become their sanctuary over the past month. You shouldn't expend such effort on my comfort, she said, though her tone lacked conviction. Elias glanced up with a smile that still made her chest feel peculiarly tight. You're stuck with Earth food until we figure this out. The least I can do is make it digestible for you. He had been working tirelessly to synthesize nutrients compatible with her alien biology. Such consideration was unsettling. Throughout her centuries as a warrior, Thalira had never experienced being cared for in this manner. There, Elias said triumphantly, holding up a vial of iridescent liquid. This should supplement what you're missing from your native diet. Thalira accepted it, their fingers brushing. Such casual contact had become commonplace between them, yet each touch still sent a wave of awareness through her system. Thank you, she said simply. Later, as they sat before the fireplace, a primitive heating method that Thalira had come to appreciate for its primal beauty, Elias asked the question he'd been avoiding. Your armor has been signaling more frequently. They're coming for you, aren't they? Thalira nodded, the stellar patterns in her hair reflecting the firelight. A retrieval unit has entered your solar system, Commander Vorix, my former mentor. What will happen when they arrive? They will demand my return, she said quietly, and they will evaluate Earth's threat level based on the Vazari incursion. Elias moved closer, taking her hand in his. Over the weeks, he had learned to read her subtle expressions, the slight tension around her eyes that indicated concern, the barely perceptible softening of her mouth when she was pleased. And what about this, he asked, gesturing between them, your pledge and everything else? Everything else, the combat training that had evolved into dancing, the technological exchanges that had become intimate conversations, the careful distance that had transformed into something neither of them had names for. The pledge can be dissolved only by death or by my commanding officer, Thalira explained, but even if it were broken, she hesitated, unused to articulating emotions. I would not wish to leave. Elias' expression softened. I wouldn't want you to go either. He leaned forward and with characteristic human boldness pressed his lips to hers. Thalira froze momentarily before responding, her hands rising to cup his face as she explored this strange human custom that somehow felt profoundly right. When they parted, Elias' eyes were questioning, was that acceptable to your people? My people do not do this, she admitted, but I find I am no longer only of my people. She pulled him back to her, their second kiss deeper and more certain. That night, as snow continued to fall outside their hideaway, Thalira experienced what it meant to be more than a warrior. Elias' hands mapped the constellations embedded in her skin with reverent wonder, while she discovered the strange, beautiful fragility of human anatomy. Their joining transcended physical differences, creating something new and undefined, something that existed only in the space between their disparate worlds. Afterward, as Elias slept beside her, Thalira faced a truth she had been avoiding. She had fallen in love with a human. The realization should have terrified her, yet it brought a strange peace instead. Morning brought reality crashing back. Thalira's armor emitted an urgent alert, waking them both. They've entered Earth's atmosphere, she said, reading the sovereignty script flashing across her wrist display. Vorix requests immediate contact. Elias sat up, sleep forgotten, then we make contact on our terms. Hours later, they stood together on the mountain peak, the modified quantum communicator humming between them. Thalira had donned her full armor, once again the imposing commander she had been upon arrival, but her hand remained firmly clasped with Elias. The air shimmered, and a holographic figure materialized before them. Tall, imposing, with the same luminescent skin as Thalira, but bearing more elaborate stellar patterns indicating higher rank. Commander Thalira, Vorix's voice resonated with authority. You have violated protocol and compromised your mission. Circumstances required adaptation, Thalira replied formally. Vorix's silver eyes shifted to Ilia's, then to their joined hands. I see, and this primitive is responsible for your capture. Not capture, Ilias interjected, partnership. Silence, human, Vorix commanded. This is sovereignty business. He has the right to speak, Thalira said, her grip on Ilias' hand tightening. By ancient law, he defeated me in honorable combat. The pledge binds us. A pledge can be dissolved, Vorix stated flatly. Not this one, Thalira's voice strengthened, not without my consent. For the first time, uncertainty crossed Vorix's face. You have changed, Thalira. Your loyalty to the sovereignty is in question. My loyalty remains, she countered, but it has expanded to include Earth and him. Vorix studied them both for a long moment. You have 24 Earth hours to present yourself for extraction, alone, or we will take you by force and Earth's evaluation will reflect the resistance. The hologram vanished, leaving them alone in the cold mountain air. He'll separate us, Ilia said, fear edging his voice. Thalira turned to him, determination hardening her features. No, he will not. How can you be sure? Her hand rose to touch the place above her heart where her rank insignia glowed beneath her armor. Because I am no longer merely bound by a pledge. She pressed her forehead to his, the gesture now familiar and cherished between them. I am bound by choice, by love. Ilias pulled her closer, his human fragility belied by the strength of his embrace. Then we faced them together. As they descended the mountain to prepare for what lay ahead, Thalira realized that in finding love with Ilias, she had discovered something her centuries as a warrior had never taught her. Some battles weren't won through strength or strategy, but through the courage to choose one's own path among the stars. The Astral Sovereignty's command ship hovered ominously above the desert research facility, casting a shadow that stretched for miles. Inside the facility's main hall, Admiral Vexner, Thalira's former commander, stood with 4 elite guards, his silver eyes cold as he faced Ilias and Thalira. The Council's decision is final, Vexner announced, his voice echoing through the chamber. Commander Thalira has breached our most sacred protocols by sharing advanced knowledge with an uncleared species. Her bond with you, he pointed at Ilias, is deemed a threat to galactic security. Thalira stepped forward, her hand intertwined with Ilias. Our laws also state that bonds of honor cannot be broken without proper challenge. Which is why I'm here in person, Vexner replied. The challenge is simple, prove that your union strengthens both species or Thalira returns with us today. Ilias squared his shoulders, and how exactly do we prove that? Vexner produced a crystalline cube that projected a holographic combat arena. The trial of unified minds. You will face a simulation designed to test not just your individual capabilities, but your strength as a bonded pair. Thalira tensed beside Ilias. The trial hasn't been invoked in 7 generations. Most bonded pairs don't survive it. Precisely, Vexner's mouth curved into a cold smile. If your bond is merely one of convenience or misplaced sentiment, it will fail. If it represents true evolutionary advancement, you will succeed, and the Council will reconsider Earth's position. Ilias glanced at Thalira, seeing the concern in her now expressive eyes. Over the past months, her silver irises had developed subtle variations that he'd learned to read like a book. We'll do it, Ilias said firmly. Ilias, Thalira whispered, turning to face him. This isn't just a simulation, our minds will be linked completely. You'll experience every wound I receive, feel every emotion I've ever hidden, and I'll experience yours. He cupped her face, thumbs tracing the luminescent markings on her cheeks that glowed brighter when she was emotional. Then there will be no more secrets between us. I'm not losing you, Thalira. The preparation chamber was silent as they donned the neural interfaces. Thalira's hands moved with practiced efficiency as she helped Ilias adjust his equipment. In our culture, she said softly, complete mental fusion is reserved for life-bonded pairs. It's intimate beyond physical connection. Ilias caught her hands, bringing them to his lips. Then consider this my proposal. Her eyes widened, stars seeming to dance in their silver depths. You realize what you're saying. I do, he smiled. Whether we pass this trial or not, I want you, not because of some ancient pledge, but because I love who you are. Tears gathered at the corners of her eyes, a human reaction she'd developed recently. Then let them see what we already know. The simulation engulfed them in light. Suddenly they stood on a battlefield unlike any Ilias had imagined. Creatures formed of shadow and light attacked from all sides, each strike requiring perfect synchronization to deflect. Their minds merged. Ilias gasped as centuries of Thalira's memories flooded him, her training, her loneliness as an elite warrior, the rigid honor code that had shaped her existence. And she experienced the ridicule from colleagues, his parents' early deaths, the driving need to prove that humanity wasn't alone in the universe. Their pain and joy mingled, creating something new and powerful. Left, Thalira's voice rang in his mind as he ducked instinctively, while she leapt over him to strike a shadow creature. They moved as one being, her combat skills flowing through his body while his scientific reasoning enhanced her tactical abilities. Hours compressed into minutes as they fought together. When the final challenge appeared, a chasm too wide to jump, they didn't hesitate. Together, they built a bridge of pure energy, drawing from Thalira's knowledge and Ilias' innovative approach to quantum mechanics. When the simulation ended, they fell to their knees, still mentally connected, tears streaming down both their faces. Vexner stood speechless as the neural interfaces powered down. The readings on his monitors were unprecedented. "Impossible," he murmured, examining the data. "Your neural synchronization reached levels we've only theorized about." Thalira helped Ilias to his feet, both still trembling from the intensity of their connection. "Not impossible," she said, "just unexpected. Human adaptability combined with sovereign discipline created something new." "The Council will need to reevaluate," Vexner admitted grudgingly. "Earth's status will be upgraded to potential ally rather than observation subject." He hesitated, then bowed slightly to them both. "And your bond is recognized under sovereign law." After Vexner and his guards departed, promising diplomatic relations would begin formally within the month. Ilias and Thalira stood alone on the facility's observation deck, watching the command ship disappear into the evening sky. "So," Ilias said, pulling her close, "now that you're officially not my sworn warrior anymore but my equal partner, what happens next?" Thalira smiled, the stars in her eyes shimmering. "Now we really begin. There's an entire galaxy waiting and we've just rewritten the rules of engagement." She leaned forward, her lips meeting his in a kiss that sealed their bond more permanently than any ancient pledge. As night fell around them, the stars above seemed to burn brighter, witnesses to a union that would change two civilizations forever. "I'm still trying to process everything I saw in your mind," Ilias whispered against her hair. "We have a lifetime to understand each other completely," she replied, her fingers tracing the new matching mark that had appeared on both their wrists during the trial. A symbol neither human nor sovereign, but something entirely new. As they held each other under the vast sky, both knew with absolute certainty that their greatest adventures were only just beginning.